It started as just another quiet Saturday morning until I walked out to find a bright yellow clamp locked onto my car tire. No warning, no notice, just bam, clamped right there in my own neighborhood. The HOA claimed I was illegally parked, even though I've parked in that same spot for years without a problem. I was frustrated, confused, and honestly a little embarrassed. But what they really didn't know, was that my son, who was visiting that weekend, just so happens to be a federal judge. Yeah, you heard that right. Now, I'm not the kind of person who likes to throw around titles or pull strings. I believe in following the rules and treating people with respect. But something about the way the HOA reps spoke to me that morning, smug and dismissive, just didn't sit right. They wouldn't hear me out, wouldn't show me any documentation, just pointed to the fine print and walked off like I didn't matter. That's when my son stepped in. Calm, respectful, but with that quiet authority only someone in his position can carry. What happened next caught everyone off guard. Let's just say the HOA wasn't ready for the kind of questions he started asking. And as things unfolded, it became clear this wasn't just about a parking spot. It was about something bigger. Stick around, because what started as a simple clamp on my car turned into a story none of us saw coming. The neighborhood I live in is governed by a strict HOA, one of those associations where the rule book feels thicker than a phone directory, and enforcement is almost militant. For the most part, I've always tried to keep peace with them. I pay the dues, keep the lawn trimmed, and avoid any unnecessary friction. But this time was different. My car wasn't obstructing traffic. It was parked neatly along the curb in front of my property. I and several other residents have parked countless times without incident. What made it more suspicious was how quickly the clamp appeared. Almost like someone had been waiting for a reason. No prior violation notice, no conversation, just a penalty slapped on without warning. When I tried to ask questions, the HOA representative gave vague answers and kept referring me to a clause in the community guidelines that supposedly justified the action. But when my son requested to see that clause, their attitude shifted instantly. Suddenly, they were cautious, choosing their words more carefully. Now, for context, my son doesn't flaunt his title. He's grounded. Doesn't seek confrontation, but when someone starts pushing boundaries under the pretense of authority, he pays attention. He started asking for written documentation, time-stamped records, and photographic evidence of any parking infraction. The HOA rep looked uncomfortable, like he hadn't expected to be challenged at all. That's when we began to suspect something deeper might be going on, something the HOA didn't want us to dig into. As my son continued asking questions, the HOA rep started getting defensive. He claimed the complaint came from an anonymous resident, which felt off. I've lived in this neighborhood for over a decade, and most of the folks here know me. We wave, chat by the mailbox, share holiday cookies. If someone had a real issue, I'm pretty sure they would have just knocked on my door. That anonymous excuse sounded more like a cover-up than a reason. My son requested the minutes from the last HOA meeting and any records showing when the parking policy had been updated. The rep stuttered, said we'd have to file a formal request, and walked off with a forced smile. That's when my neighbor, Mr. Lanning, came over. He's been living across the street for nearly 20 years and whispered something that caught us off guard. Turns out, I wasn't the first. 3 other residents had been clamped in the past month, all in similar spots, all without warning. And oddly enough, all of them had recently raised concerns about how HOA dues were being spent. Now, that changed everything. What looked like a simple parking violation might actually be retaliation. My son raised an eyebrow and said, "This might not be about your car at all." That's when he suggested we check into the HOA board members, who they were, how they got elected, and whether their actions were even legal under the community bylaws. The deeper we looked, the more cracks started to show. We spent the next 2 days going through everything: bylaws, old HOA, meeting notes, budget reports, anything we could legally get our hands on. The more we found, the stranger things got. A pattern started to emerge: fines issued without proper notice. Sudden rule changes quietly added to the community guidelines. And most of these so-called violations were targeting residents who had either spoken up or questioned where the HOA dues were going. My son, being who he is, knew exactly what to look for. He pointed out inconsistencies in the meeting record states that didn't line up, approvals made without required voting, and one board member who'd somehow signed off on every single clamp request. That same board member, he also owned a local towing company listed in the HOA's vendor records. Coincidence? Didn't seem like it. Tension in the neighborhood was rising too. A few neighbors started coming forward quietly, telling us their stories. Some had been hit with unexpected maintenance charges. Others had been warned for rule violations that didn't even exist in the handbook. It was like the HOA had created its own set of rules and was enforcing them without oversight. My son kept documenting everything, building a timeline, keeping calm while I was ready to lose my mind. Then we received an anonymous note in our mailbox. No name, no return address, just a folded piece of paper that said, asterisk, be careful. You're not the only one they've tried to silence. That was the moment we knew we were in deeper than we thought. The note shook us. My son read it twice, then slid it into a folder with the rest of the documents. Someone's watching, he said quietly. That same night, just before midnight, we heard a car idling outside. I peeked through the blinds and saw a dark SUV parked across the street. No lights on, engine running. It sat there for about 15 minutes before slowly driving off. No plates we could see. Nothing to prove anything, but it felt deliberate. The next morning, things escalated. I got an email from the HOA stating that my property was now under formal review for multiple violations, including yard maintenance and unauthorized structure modifications. It was complete nonsense. I hadn't touched anything on the property. It was clear they were coming after me now. Harder, faster. Retaliation. Plain and simple. My son immediately reached out to the HOA's legal representative, but the call went straight to voicemail. Then he found something else stuck deep. Inside the HOA financial records, a transaction for consulting fees paid out monthly to a private security firm. The name of the firm, same as the SUV seen in the neighborhood months ago, according to another resident we spoke to later that day. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just about power or fines. It was about intimidation. Someone on that board was using HOA resources to control residents through fear. And just as we thought we were getting close, a letter arrived from the HOA's attorney threatening legal action against us. My son didn't flinch when that legal threat came in. Instead, he calmly prepared a formal response backed by documented evidence, unauthorized fines, procedural violations, conflicts of interest, and misuse of HOA funds. He also filed a complaint with the state's Department of Consumer Affairs, which oversees HOA conduct. Within days, the pressure started shifting. The board called an emergency meeting closed to the public, but word got out anyway. A few brave neighbors finally stepped up and shared their own paperwork and timelines. One had emails proving the HOA president had ordered specific residents to be targeted. Another uncovered invoices showing inflated payments to the towing company, run by the same board member we'd already flagged. It was all stacking up fast. The turning point came when my son sent a letter directly to the HOA's attorney, outlining everything. He didn't mention his title, but he did cite multiple legal precedents and offered a deadline for the HOA to respond before he escalated things to federal authorities. That same afternoon, the clamp on my car was removed. The fines were erased, And the formal review on my property was withdrawn. Quietly, no explanation, just when we thought it was over. Though a new HOA election was announced and all current board members had suddenly resigned. Every single one. But here's the twist. One of the names on the ballot for president. The HOA's former attorney. So, while one battle was won, we realized the war for fairness in the neighborhood might just be getting started. After everything that happened, the neighborhood didn't quite feel the same, but in some ways, that wasn't a bad thing. The fear that had kept people quiet started to fade. More residents began attending meetings, asking questions, demanding transparency. For the first time in years, people were actually reading the HOA bylaws and holding board members accountable. The illusion of power the HOA had used for so long was finally broken. My son didn't stick around for long. He had to get back to work, but before he left, he reminded me of something I've thought about every day since. He said, "Rules are fine, but when people use them to control instead of serve, that's when they need to be challenged." That stuck with me. And it's exactly what happened here. The former attorney who tried running for HOA president, he quietly withdrew his name from the ballot 2 days before the election. No explanation. A new board was voted in neighbors we actually knew and trusted.